Hey, thank you guys so much for coming out tonight. Sorry I couldn't make it in person. The time change to 6:30 made it a little bit hard to travel down after work, but it doesn't matter because PowerPoints is PowerPoints. So today we are going to be talking about how to build your own personal brand. This basically is how to sell yourself, whether that be through your social media, through your portfolio, your resume, and how to put all that together into kind of a cohesive image to market yourself for professional networking and job application reasons. So I really like this quote. It says, "Two things remain irretrievable, time and a first impression." I think this is really important to think about when you are building your personal brand. You want to think about, what do you want people to see in you when they first see you? What is kind of your tagline? What is your elevator pitch? What impression do you want to leave if you only have 20 seconds to talk to somebody? Because that's really going to stick, and that's why having a personal brand is very important. So why does your image matter? So as I just talked about, first impression. So first impressions help you get past those gatekeepers in jobs and professional settings. They help you get past HR. They help you get past that big pile of resumes that the people at the career fair have, where they all look very similar. How do they remember you? So that moves on to the next point. It helps you be recognizable, to stand out from the crowd. There's a lot of people applying to things. There's a lot of people going to mixers and networking events. So what makes you stick out and be memorable? And last, it helps you showcase yourself. So you have talents, you have skills, you have a great personality. So it's a way to put that and inject that into your marketing materials for yourself. So first, how do you create your own personal brand? So I'd say the big three things, especially now that we're in the digital age. Number one is obviously your resume. Number two would be a portfolio. And number three would be your social media. So first, let's look at these resumes. If you saw these, would there be anything particularly memorable about them? They're all black and white. They all have bullet points, but other than, maybe the double bars on the John Doe one or like slightly different fonts, they're all very similar. So adding a little bit of spice to your resume can very much help you stick out. I would recommend looking into different templates and looking at examples online. You don't have to be crazy out of the box, especially for something like engineering. It might be something as simple as adding a bar of color. But doing something that makes your resume look different than a typical Word template really, really can help. Because after all, your resume is just going into a big stack. So you want it to be able to be found and stick out against all of those piles of, 12-point Calibri font, bullet point, black. So some tips for how to kind of beef up your resume outside of obviously the traditional resume tips for content. Use a unique but readable font set. So you're going to want it to be, something that isn't too, stand out, something that isn't going to be distracting. You don't want to do like curls or cracked or anything like that, but you want it to be something unique. That's one of the reasons I'd recommend either going to like a font website or looking at kind of what Adobe has to see, because the traditional like Microsoft Office ones like Times New Roman and Calibri are very much used and they don't stand out as much. Again, add a pop of color. This is probably the easiest thing to do. It could be something as simple as changing the color of your name on the resume, adding a sidebar in a different color, even just adding a line, but it really does help make it, pop against the black and white. Again, add an interesting layout element. So instead of just having straight up and down bullet points, you could add a sidebar, you could add something interesting on the top or a little blurb on the side, and that can really help and also help you utilize your space on that page better. You can create a personal logo. I know a couple people in this room have their own personal logos that are very near and dear to their hearts, and I've always been very impressed by them. And then also make your own template. So you can either, find a cool one online that you think is pretty unique, but I would recommend looking at a couple ones that you like, make a, Pinterest board or something like that, and then pull, different elements that you like from them and kind of make it your own thing if you're somebody that has that kind of graphic design skill. And if not, if you're going for something quick, there are a ton available online. So next, moving into portfolios. First of all, what is a portfolio? I know a lot of us have an engineering background and we're not quite familiar with what this means, but basically a portfolio is very simple and very broad at the same time. It is just a way to showcase things that are better in a visual format or even a video format than they are straight written out. So you have a couple of different options when creating your portfolio. So the more traditional is creating a physical or digital copy. This would be kind of making a book. And you could do that in something like InDesign or PowerPoint or in a similar program. And you can even, I know for a lot of architecture programs, they actually have you make a physical book with InDesign. You can order them direct from. And that's really good for, if you have to link a file on a job application, or even if you are going into a job interview, having that physical copy of your portfolio can be very helpful for somebody to flip through. The second option is my favorite because it is very accessible. You can just pull it up on your phone, and that is making a website. So your website, luckily there are a lot of free website creator tools like Wix and Weebly and all that are pretty good and pretty helpful for beginners that have a lot of different tool options for galleries and blogs that are very, very easy to use for showing off your projects. And then last, the sky's kind of the limit. A portfolio can be whatever you feel would best showcase your work. If you are an actor, that could be, a YouTube channel or a film reel. It really is whatever you consider to be the best way to showcase bits and pieces of your projects. So again, looking at options for creating a book portfolio, this is again the more traditional type. You can either create a physical book or do it in an application and just have almost like a slideshow. But the goal is to showcase big pictures and short captions. So some good programs for that include InDesign, which is also good because InDesign has a built-in option where you can actually get it sent out to be made into a physical book if you want. There's Publisher, and also I like Keynote, but you could also use PowerPoint or anything similar. But basically anything that has a big image format will probably be best for this. Then obviously you have your website options. Luckily, we live in a day and age where there are so many easy and a lot of free ways to create a website. I'd suggest Wix. GoDaddy, I think, also has free options, but there are other ways to do it as well. But a lot of them are very user-friendly, and they have really cool templates built in that you can customize. So moving into social media. We live in 2022, current year. You are online. So when it comes to making yourself marketable, you can use this to your advantage. I'm not saying necessarily don't put all of your cute dog pictures and stuff on your Facebook, but there are different tools that you can use to supplement your personal social media to make a bit more of an online presence in the digital sphere. So going through a couple of these. So Instagram, I like for showing off personal projects. I know you probably have a couple of friends who maybe have a crochet account or an art account or an account where they show off that they're building their car, but it's a very good way to, have a couple of pictures, a slideshow, and a caption. That's great for showing off works in progress and quick pictures of your final product without having to go into, making a blog post or going into editing your website. The most important, obviously, when it comes to professional networking would be LinkedIn. If you do not have a LinkedIn, make one as soon as possible. They are absolutely fantastic. LinkedIn actually has the best algorithm out of any of the social medias in terms of reach. So what they do is if I have 400 connections on LinkedIn and I make a post, if 200 of my connections see it and 100 of them like it, that's fine. That's probably not going to happen. But the best part is anybody who likes a post or comments on a post, that post gets shown to everybody in their circle as well. So it's getting sent out to people who are not in your connection or not in your circle of connections, but are kind of adjacent. So you can make a lot of connections really easily. And that's really important when it comes to if you're looking for an internship or something like that. Also, it is very much optimized for professional use. So it's basically like an extended version of your resume. So I would definitely look into learning all the tools in LinkedIn and also making posts because they really do work. Twitter is really good for artists, freelancers, and performers. It's, again, very short form, but if you're sharing updates or images and things like that, it can be really good for that. I would not recommend Facebook for professional use. That's why there's nothing there. But you do you. If you want to put your work on Facebook Marketplace or try to get people to hire you on Facebook Dating, that is up to you. All right. So now that we've kind of gone through what the basic tools for building your personal brand are, the question is, where do you even start? So I say there are two very important questions that you need to ask yourself. First, you need to ask yourself, who are you? This includes asking, what are your hobbies? What are your interests, your talents? What do you like to do? What is that, are you going to school? What do you do for a living? What do you do outside of school? Do you volunteer? Also, what is your personality like? Are you a very, professional, analytical person? Or are you a bit more on the, creative, whimsical side? What is your general vibe? I know that word seems kind of cringy, but I think in this context, you are crafting a vibe, so to speak. And then the second question, and it again is very much linked to the first, is what do you want others to think you are? And so obviously you're probably not going to go out of your way to lie to the general public, but you're going to kind of hone that image of yourself into something that showcases all of your best traits in a way that is very memorable. So that is the second thing. What is the impression that you are trying to give off, and what is your goal with that impression? So a couple of things to consider when you're thinking about maybe how to, what to start with maybe creating your brand. So first, I would kind of split it up into kind of like graphics, content, and then purpose. So for graphics, you're going to heavily want to consider things like color. If you look into color theory, different colors, evoke different emotions and have different moods to them. So if you want to be more trustworthy, you'd have blue. If you want to be more passionate, you'd have red, creative yellow. So those are very important things to look into when you're building your website and things like that. If you have a bright pink website and you're a legal firm, it might not look like it mixes as well. I say as somebody with a bright pink website. Next, you're going to look at things like shapes and edges. This is basically like, do you want softer shapes? Do you want them to be, maybe a little bit more organic? Do you want them to be very crisp? This can very much help with conveying your mood and kind of the energy that your website and your portfolio and everything have. You're going to want to look at fonts, things like sans serif fonts. Those are the ones without the kind of extra lines on like the ends of the letters. Those look more modern, whereas the serif fonts look more classic. You're going to look at layout, basically how are you going to put things together, and then obviously what images you're going to have. When it comes to content, you're going to want to look at phrasing. So how are you wording your things? Are you using a more casual tone? Are you using a very technical tone? You're going to look at what you want to include. So maybe you have a quirky hobby that you think would be very interesting and you want to include that, or you want to keep it, strictly into what you're doing. Maybe you're just an engineer, you're only including your engineering things. You're going to want to figure that out. And then next, kind of what is your general elevator pitch? How would you self-summarize? That's very important because on things like, the top bar of the resume, sometimes they'll have a self-summary, or on your website in an about section, that's something you're really going to want to craft. Next, for your purpose. So number one, what is your target audience? If you're a freelancer, are you looking for customers? Are you somebody who's trying to get an engineering job? Are you an actor in search of work? This is kind of what you're thinking about, who you're going to be reaching and what they want to see. Next, you're going to think about like your platforms and your formats. So again, we just went through a lot of different formats and platforms to make all of these different things. So figure out which ones work for you and why. Are you going to be posting updates to things? Is that something that you need to do? Do you just have long form projects that have one end goal, or do you have something like a design team project that you could showcase pictures at different points in time, and that would be beneficial? And then finally, what is your goal with this? Are you looking to get a job? Are you looking to get work? Are you just looking to put yourself out there and make new connections? These are all very important to think about. And so I have some examples of my kind of personal brand that I've included. So aside from the pink bar on the outside is just a background, but this is my resume. I created this based off of a couple of resumes that I found on the internet and I thought looked cute. I used InDesign. And it's the good thing about InDesign is it's kind of more of a drag and drop thing that just has snaps. So if you're somebody that likes graphic design and hates when Word always like pulls your things up to different places, it's very good to use for that. But basically I tried to go for a more modern look, but still have that kind of like fresh feminine color, which is why I had the kind of coral sidebar and everything. So, but I still tried to keep it professional because again, as an engineer, you're kind of limited to the amount of whimsy I think that you can have when applying to things. This is my website. So I use my website as a portfolio. So I have a project blog, but I also have kind of more short form descriptions of things like my theater projects. I have a gallery that links directly to my Instagram, which is my art Instagram. So it's a very good way to kind of have, if you have varied projects or even just simple projects that you want to be able to update frequently, and just give somebody a link or a QR code. I'd say the website's the way to go, but I used a template and then I worked off of it. It was very simple, very easy to change colors and pick a palette. Again, I was going for more of a more whimsical design here. And then here are my important socials. So my first one, I chose to do an Instagram because as an artist, obviously Instagram is pictures. So if you're a visual artist, that's a good way to go. If you're an actor, you'd use YouTube, but I think it's been a good way for me to get commissions and things like that, less so for professional connections. And then LinkedIn, I post probably once a week to once every month, depending on updates. But I've gotten a lot of people messaging me and asking to connect every time I post. So I would highly suggest it, especially if you're trying to get yourself out there and see what projects other people are doing as well. So aside from the big three, there are a couple of other things that you can consider. So first is business cards. Business cards are great. You just hand them out. Great for in-person networking events. Next is a personal logo. This is probably the hardest one of all because you have to be good at graphic design, but you can make it pretty simply and there's a lot of different ways you can do it. Next is a CV. So a CV is basically a resume, but everything you've ever done ever. So they can be a little bit trickier to format because you don't have that like 1 page to 2 page limit, but it's very good to have, especially the more experience you get. Film reel, if you're an actor, I don't know how many actors are in here, but yeah, so there's a lot of options and a lot of ways to showcase yourself. But basically the question you need to ask is how do you show off you? So I have a couple more examples. These are some business cards. You might recognize a couple of the names on here, but as you can see, they all have a logo or some sort of image, and they're all very different and unique and give off very different energies. So for the top one, it's very organic. It shows off that, this is my mom's, by the way, it shows off that she makes soap. It has more of a delicate feel and it's kind of rich in color, which feels kind of luxurious and decadent. And so that is a perfect thing for a small luxury soap business company. Chris's is pretty fun. If y'all are Gator fans and you're another Gator alum and you see his card out in the wild, you're gonna know he goes to UF. He made his personal logo with, Chris, did you use CAD for that or Excel? Both. So that's how he made his logo, which is super dope. So it's very like engineering-y and looks very like architectural, and it's very inventive and colorful, but still keeps within like the professional level of color, because blue is kind of a neutral. If you look at Will's is a lot more crisp. It's almost like a more of a traditional business card, but if you look in the background, you do see the lovely roller coaster back there. So it definitely, it shows that he's an engineer, it shows that he's professional, and it's a bit more, I'd say a little less fun, but definitely with the drop shadow back there. It shows off what he does. And then there's a very old mock-up of one that I did. It's very quirky and girly. If it was, that's something that would work really well for if you were like a graphic designer or an artist, but maybe not so much for an engineer because of the fact that it's very organic and sketchy. but they all have very different vibes, and it's very simple to kind of tell who these people are based off of even just a business card. So thank you guys so much for listening to my giant big head on the screen. We are now going to actually begin the workshopping part of the workshop. So I don't think we have any people online, but I believe Grace has written down some names on the board for people who are willing to do resume, portfolio, and website reviews. So if you have anything that you brought with you, we're kind of gonna split up into like 3 parts of the room and then do that for a little bit. So yeah, turn it over to Grace.
So over there, we're gonna do resumes. So people who are working on resumes can go or helping